Good morning from WKYT News. I'm Bill Bryant. We welcome you to Kentucky Newsmakers. Later, we're joined by State Auditor Alison, who will describe the steps she is taking in the investigation of Fayette County Public Schools. But first, Kentucky U.S. Senator Rand Paul is joining us as the issues are swirling in Washington. Senator Paul has staked out several positions that differ with the Trump administration. He has long called for a better budgeting process than the Band-Aid legislation that was used this week as the federal government was facing shutdown. Senator Paul has never voted for an unbalanced budget and is known for his annual analysis of government waste. Senator Paul is joining us now from Washington. Senator, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Bill.
We're doing this interview at midweek, but as of now, the federal government is in partial shutdown. You have said it doesn't have to be this way. You have also voted against Senate measures to avoid it, though. How do we get out of this situation where the government runs out of money?
Well, I think, first of all, the government ought to act in a responsible way. You know, every Kentucky family basically spends what comes in. You borrow sometimes some money if you have a house and you have a house and the bank holds the note basically to the house. You can borrow some money, but most people earn a certain amount per week and that's what they're able to spend. Currently, your government, though, brings in about $5 trillion in tax revenue but spends $7 trillion. So we are having about a $2 trillion addition to the debt every year. So what they've been floating is two different possibilities, two different proposals right now. The Republicans are saying we should just continue spending money at the same rate. The same rate as basically they were spending it under the Biden administration. This leads to about a $2 trillion deficit. And I've, promised to the people of Kentucky I'm not voting for a $1 trillion deficit, so I'm a no on that. The Democrats offered an alternative, and theirs would have had $1 trillion in more spending, which would lead to a $3 trillion deficit. So I think both the choices are bad. Republican plan, $2 trillion in the hole. Democrat plan, $3 trillion in the hole. I offered an alternative last week. It's called the penny plan, and my budget was able to be heard by the entire Senate because neither the Republicans or the Democrats bothered to put forward a budget this year. So mine was a privileged motion. They don't like voting on it, but they were forced to. And I got 36 Republicans supporting it. So over half of the caucus, but not quite enough, to pass the legislation. I didn't get any Democrat support. But my plan would have cut a certain percentage of spending across the board over a 5-year period and would have led to a balanced budget within 5 years. I think that's the direction we ought to be taking.
Senator, the American people are probably stunned, though, to realize that there is no even proposed budget, and certainly is not one that is passed and put into law as we enter a new fiscal year.
Yeah, what kind of company would have a $7 trillion business? That's what the federal government has. They spend $7 trillion and there's no budget. The deadline for the budget was back in April. So I've been preparing and working on mine. We do it every year in case they don't propose a budget. If either party had put forward a budget by a certain deadline, then my budget wouldn't have been allowed to have a vote, and it wouldn't have happened. But I've gotten a vote on my budget most years because in most years, both parties fail to put forward a budget.
What does a shutdown do in terms of creating instability for federal employees and those who rely on the federal government, which is all of us in one way or the other?
It's chaotic. It's not good. It's not something I recommend. Shutting down the government is never a good idea. But the reason it's shut down is also because they're not doing the appropriation bills the way they should. Government is divided, the spending for government is divided into 12 different appropriation bills. If they'd been doing them one at a time, and let's say we had passed 11 out of 12 bills and we only lacked one, then 1/12 of government would shut down. The reason most of government is shutting down is because we haven't completed any of the appropriation bills, not one of them. We've voted on a few of them, but none of them have gotten to the president's desk for signature. Do they know this is coming? Yes, it comes every year, and they fail to do their job. So because the appropriation bills weren't done, it's actually all or none. So the reason we're faced with something that is, I think, an untenable choice between a $2 trillion deficit and a 3 is we weren't given individual bills, because each bill could be then assessed in light of what the spending included in that bill was, not all of the spending for all of government in one bill which is impossible for most people to digest, really.
Would you agree, Senator, that the medicine you provide is too strong for either side, who, as you
Probably.
say, want to spend more?
Yeah, probably. But the great irony is the spending levels that we're voting on are the Biden spending levels from last December. So in December, mostly Democrats voted for, in fact, all of the Democrats in the Senate voted for the Biden spending levels. We come to March of this year, they voted to continue these spending levels. Now we're in September, and all the Democrats who voted for this in December of last year are now voting against it. So there's a certain degree of irony or hypocrisy that they're voting against spending money to keep the government open, even though these are still the Biden spending levels.
How do we work ourselves out of this and get the government to reopen and people, with their paychecks going out to them?
My prediction is maybe even by the time this airs on Sunday morning, the Democrats will have come to the table and said, well, we got concessions from the president. We're going to vote to reopen the government. I think the concession will be that the president will agree to discuss concessions on some of these Obamacare subsidies. I think that's what the likely outcome will be, but I don't think government will stay shut very long. The people who are not paid for 4 or 5 days, what typically happens is when they open the government again, they agree to back pay all those people. So there's never been a shutdown in our history, and I've been up here through several shutdowns. In each instance, the workers who don't come to work, that are declared unessential and don't work during the shutdown, all get paid for that work, even though they didn't come to work.
All right, we'll see how it unfolds here. You have also differed with President Trump on tariffs. He has said that he's using them as a tool to lure jobs and business back to the U.S. We did have the announcement here in Kentucky of more of the glass business coming to Corning and Harrodsburg by Apple phones. But you remain very skeptical of his strategy.
We're excited about Apple's expansion in Harrodsburg and with Corning. We're also excited about battery plants and things coming to our state, but we also hear from other people like the farmers that their corn and soybean crops, the prices have gotten much lower, but they've lost most of their foreign market, particularly in China. China's now buying most of their soybean and corn from Brazil. This has been a pretty big hit for our farmers. 20 to 25% of what they grow was being exported. And the retaliation for tariffs on China has been they just quit buying our farm goods. The automakers in our state have a lot of parts, and part of their supply chain goes in and out of Canada and Mexico. This has been working pretty well now for a couple of decades, but those new tariffs on the car manufacturers are causing a problem. The tariffs on Canada and on Europe have been retaliated with tariffs on bourbon. It's worse than just tariffs on bourbon. In certain places in Canada, they've quit selling bourbon at all. So it's not like a tariff. They've embargoed bourbon because they're so mad about either comments about trade or about being the 51st state that they didn't find funny. They just decided not to sell our bourbon anymore. So the bourbon industry's been hit by this as well. We have two big shipping companies, DHL and UPS, that both do international shipping. I think their international shipping has been hit by this also. So there's a lot of people being hurt by this. Occasionally there will be some triumphs, but I don't think it's worth the disruption. I also think that tariffs, which are import taxes, should originate in the House of Representatives like the Constitution indicates.
Should be congressionally passed, in your view?
Yeah, the Constitution was very clear. Our founding fathers didn't like taxes very much, and they didn't want high taxes. So they said that taxes had to originate in Congress as a law, but more specifically, they said that taxes have to originate in the House of Representatives, go to the Senate, and then they're signed by the president. These tariffs are being done under an emergency order by the president. Two courts have so far ruled them to be unconstitutional. The Supreme Court's going to hear it sometime in the next month, but I don't think it's the type of law we want. And it's not because I don't like Donald Trump. It's actually because I fear an AOC or a progressive left-wing president comes in and declares a climate emergency and says we can't drive our gasoline-powered cars anymore. I worry about emergencies emerging from the left that would be very unpalatable, but really the rule of law says that neither party should operate under emergency. We should operate under the Constitution.
You have recently traveled with Congressman Thomas Massie, the Republican who represents the 4th District, and visited with voters, and you made other stops as well around the state. What are you hearing out there from your constituents as you listen to the issues they're concerned about?
Well, you know, both myself and Thomas Massie, I think, were received very well. We went throughout his district. We had, I think, 9 or 10 stops over a 2-day period. We had big crowds and warm and enthusiastic receptions. And I think that they appreciate that Thomas Massie, in the House at least, is probably the #1 defender of the Constitution, the #1 defender of a balanced budget, and likely the most conservative member of the U.S. House of Representatives. So I appreciate his voice over there. And I think that regardless of which party is in the White House, there need to be consistent voices that are for limiting spending, limited government, low taxation. And I think it's important to have Thomas Massie up there, and I hope he will remain.
The House is primarily dealing with the Epstein files. Congressman Massie is pushing for a discharge position that would force a House vote on releasing all of the investigative files. Do you favor that?
Yes, we had a vote on this 2 weeks ago in the Senate, and I voted to release the Epstein files. It isn't an issue that's occupied a lot of my attention, but I do think that justice needs to be the same whether you're rich or poor. And I think for people to have trust in government and trust in the judicial system, there can't be any kind of appearance that if you're rich or if you're a billionaire, somehow you don't get the same kind of justice that if you were middle class. There have been allegations that very wealthy people broke the law and did similar things that Epstein and his girlfriend were involved with, but then the law was never applied to them. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think in order to restore trust in our government and trust in our judicial system, I think that information ought to be released.
Senator, you serve as the chairman of the Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee. What is your primary focus there right now?
You know, my primary focus in the committee is the same as my primary focus just as a senator in general, and that's defense of liberty. You know, the Declaration of Independence says that these rights that we were endowed with by our Creator, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, are to be, government was instituted among men to secure these rights. And that's what we're supposed to do. Every day we're supposed to try to defend these rights, no matter who the president is, no matter which party is involved. Our oath and allegiance is to that Constitution. Now, our committee also is oversight. So we've also been looking at the programs that spy on American citizens who fly. We discovered through our investigation that there was a program called Quiet Skies that was surveilling Americans, particularly Tulsi Gabbard, who was a former congresswoman and now the head of intelligence. She was spied upon for no good reason and maybe for her political speech. We also discovered a air marshal's wife was spied on. They said she was at January 6th and that she entered the Capitol. She was at the White House listening to the president speak on January 6th, but she never went to the Capitol. But for 3 years, she was harassed in airports, and her husband continued to be a high-ranking person in the air marshal program, and yet they were harassing his wife and treating her as a terrorist. I think that was awful. We also discovered that people who were vocal about not wanting to wear masks and that masks didn't really work were subjected to more scrutiny and put on different watch lists because of their political point of view, and I think that's wrong. The Trump administration has canceled the Quiet Skies. That's a great step forward, but we're still looking into this because we want to make sure none of these programs come back and that Americans can travel without being spied upon by their own government.
Senator, do you have a preferred candidate in the 2026 race to replace Senator Mitch McConnell?
It's top secret, Bill. I can't tell you. No, I haven't really actually decided, even myself, who I'm going to vote for, but I am probably not going to publicly endorse. I don't plan to make a public endorsement in this. I remember a lot of different endorsements when I first ran, and I think the candidates ought to get a chance to present their message, and I don't plan on trying to tip the scale one way or another. I want to hear from all of them. To me, it's important their sincerity, their independence, their promise, and whether they'll follow through on cutting spending, whether they'll vote to send more money to Ukraine, whether they'll vote for more foreign aid, whether they'll vote to truly balance the budget. And that's what I want to hear from them. And like I say, I'm still listening.
All right. We all remember you ran for president and for re-election in 2016. It required the Republicans to hold a caucus that year because your name could not be on the primary ballot twice. Are you looking at a possible run for the White House in 2028?
I think it's too early to say, but I will consider it. Too early to determine now because I think it's just so much will occur between now and then. I do think that there needs to be a voice in the Republican Party who still believes in balanced budgets. I will probably be the only Republican in the Senate to vote against the Republican deficit. I will be the only one to vote against both the Republican and the Democrat deficit, but I think there need to be voices like mine who think that deficits are wrong no matter which party's in power. I will continue to vote to have international trade. I think international trade has made us rich as a country and has made the world a better place. And I think that we need to extol and talk about the benefits of trade to all people and how really our level of income is rising because of capitalism and trade. And I think there needs to be a voice for that in the Republican Party. And I feel that the tide has been going the other way. And we'll see whether that means a run for the presidency, but we won't know that for a year or two probably.
All right, Senator Rand Paul, thank you so much for giving us a few minutes of your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Everybody stay with us. Back with Kentucky State Auditor Alison Ball in a moment. Welcome back to Kentucky Newsmakers. Kentucky Auditor Alison Ball's office is beginning its look into the Fayette County public school system and its $16 million shortfall. It's a special examination since it occurred after being brought to the auditor's attention. The deadline for documents to be turned over to the auditor was this last week. The board is also having an independent audit done, or at least considering that. Auditor Ball is joining us right now. Welcome. We appreciate you coming in.
Thanks for having me on.
What do you want people to know about your special investigation of the Fayette County Public Schools?
Great question. So one thing I would really like everyone to know is that we are doing it. I know there's been some confusion sometimes about are we doing an audit or is there another one being performed by the school? What's going on? So just for some clarity and confidence of people, we are doing it. In fact, we actually began working on it early in the summer. So I made my announcement, I believe it was June 10th, that we were going to do an audit of the Fayette County Public School System. And we had already begun the work even before I made that announcement because we do a lot of preliminary work to begin with just to see, is this something that's worthwhile? And obviously this is one that is worthwhile. It's been in the news ever since May and it hasn't stopped, and we keep hearing more and more things about it. So this is a worthwhile endeavor, and my goal is to get this district on financially strong footing, to fix the problems that exist, find out what's going on, and get them in good shape for the future. So that's why this kind of audit is important. It's not just a look back to see how do we get to where we are. We also make recommendations, and I think this is going to be really, really key to make sure that they're on good, strong financial footing for the future, so that way they can perform the best they can.
They're in the process of turning documents over to you now. You are in receipt of some of those. What is the scope of this audit? How far will it go back?
So great question. So I've been cautious and careful as I've talked about it because I really wanted to figure out how far do we need to go. And one of the issues we look at too is the cost of an audit, because obviously we have auditors that work for us, and they have to be paid for the work that they're doing. So I have from the beginning wanted to have an appropriation for the General Assembly, and I've actually just asked for that. I submitted my budget this week and my budget proposal, and I have specifically asked for money for this audit. And that would mean that we could do a deeper dive if we wanted to. If it was just going to be the district paying for it, we probably would really limit it to just the financials. And we're going to do the financials first. That's the most pressing issue. So whatever happens, we're going to look at those financials, and we're probably going to divide up this. That's not typical for us. We usually like to do everything as a full body because that's the best way to do it. But this is a situation where we know that there are financial issues going on that need to be addressed, and we want to deal with that first.
So dividing up, does that mean some outside help?
So great question. So the Jefferson County Public School audit, which we're doing right now, that is a massive audit, and we have actually contracted out to get some expertise because we're looking at more than just the financials. We're looking at a wide variety of things. We're looking at school safety, cell phones in the classroom, your busing, a whole variety of issues. So that one is a big one. We do have more people coming in to help us with it. And if we get an appropriation from the General Assembly that is similar to what we've had in Jefferson County, that would allow us to be able to look at even broader things, which I think would be a good time to do it. If we're going to do an audit, then we might as well do our best on all of it. But that might allow us to bring in some experts. We felt like we needed it in some areas, but we've learned a lot from this Jefferson County audit, and we are more skilled than we even used to be. We learned a lot from our KDE audit, so I think we're more prepared than we used to be.
Will it stretch your resources to be doing the audit in Jefferson County? Of course, you'll be wrapping that up. And also, simultaneously, you're doing the Fayette County audit.
And that's a great question. And there is a management of resources. So that's also one reason I've been really careful as I have talked about this audit, to just make sure people understand what's going on. We've got Jefferson County at the same time as Fayette County. We only have so many auditors. And if we had a solid appropriation for the General Assembly, it does allow us to contract out, which can expand what we're able to do. So yes, you've identified something that really is a real thing. We only have so many auditors and we can only do so much work. And that's why I was cautious and careful about getting involved in this audit while we were doing Jefferson County, but we know this one's really, really important. We're going to do the finances first, so that helps. We're going to dedicate some people to dealing with that, and that won't slow down anything in Jefferson County. And this one is going on the speed as it would, even if we weren't doing Jefferson County. The financial aspects of this is the speed it should be for this kind of an audit.
There may also be an independent audit that the board may do with an outside group.
That's a good question.
Is that helpful to you, or do you wish they would just wait for your results? Or
it's not helpful to me, and so my recommendation would be, let us do our audit. I would say save your money. Don't do duplicative efforts. Let us do this. And I think the reason why there's been an ask or an idea about doing that is because people know that you need to do something. And so I think there's just an eagerness to, okay, well, we will do an RFP and we'll pay for a forensic audit and we'll do this. But we are doing a high quality, detailed audit. We're going to do a penny by penny review of the finances. We hear all the same things the public is hearing, plus we also have whistleblowers that are coming to us all the time about issues. So I think if it were me and I was advising them, I would say, let us do our job. We're going to do it well. We're going to do it right. Save your money. You don't have a lot. Save your money and let us do this. And our goal is to get this on good, strong financial footing.
And yet, Auditor, there is a clamor right now for answers. Mm-hmm. And you're saying that it'll be late next year before you can get this audit out. Is there a chance you would do some preliminary findings?
So what I actually am really hopeful and encouraged, and I think we're going to be able to do, is to get it out probably spring of next year. And that will be if we divide it up and just do the financials. So, I was careful to not give us too much of a deadline when we first started talking about this, because I didn't know how deep do we need to go. But we think we figured out a path forward where we can isolate the financial issues, do a penny by penny review, tell them what they need to do to be able to get their house in financial order, really fix this school district for the future financially. And I think we can do that in a way that's much faster.
The district first proposed increasing the occupational tax on Fayette County residents to shore up the finances. Was that a red flag to you?
That was absolutely a red flag. And I'd heard some rumblings about issues at Fayette County at the same time that I was hearing about Jefferson County, so I had it on my radar screen. But when they came asking for a tax increase because they were saying they were essentially out of money, that means you're in dire financial shape. And it was a very serious issue. The AG weighed in and said that they hadn't done it properly. So that just ratcheted up in my mind about the importance of getting involved in what's happening in Fayette County. So we moved everything up to the front of the line. And we started working on it even before I announced on June 10th. We started working on it. I think it was the end of May that they began talking about doing the tax increase. And once we had that opinion from the AG's office, we decided we needed to step in and get involved in this.
Why is it so important to you that this audit be done and it be done correctly?
Well, it's one of our largest school districts. It's the second largest school district. So you're talking about a lot of children. It's our second largest city. It impacts an enormous amount of people, and the stories that we keep hearing just show that they're in a pretty dire, woeful financial situation. Now, I'm not going to weigh in on the audit too much because I'm careful about, we review, I'm not going to prejudge anything. We're going to do the work the way we should as auditors. But we've heard a lot of stories. We've heard about $32,000 in ice cream that was purchased from Crank and Boom. You hear these stories, and it just hit home that this is one that needs to be dealt with really as quickly as possible. And so we are, and we're moving this financial aspect of it separately from anything else that we do, so that way we can fix that problem first.
In the wake of this, are you hearing about other school districts?
So. Yes, I have. So because of all the attention, I think, in Fayette County and even in Jefferson County, it's notifying other people in other school districts, hey, you might need to pay attention to your finances. You may need to pay attention to what's happening in your school. So I'm getting a lot more phone calls and just people stopping me when I'm out in the street telling me, hey, could you look at my district too? So we're definitely hearing more of that. And if I had the ability, if we had a staff that was dedicated just to school districts, I would do that, because I do think there are issues in other school districts. What I'm really hopeful is that Jefferson County and Fayette County both will allow us to use them as models, and these other school districts can look to them and see this is the way to do it, this is not the way to do it, and that's going to provide a corrective measure. There may be some more districts that we do have to jump in as we go. It's always a matter of managing resources internally, because we've got a lot of other audits we're doing too.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you're managing resources, you're having your own issues in terms of trying to cover things. I mean, there are local governments and other programs that your office looks into. Right?
That's exactly right. We did 400 audits last year, and everybody pays attention to the big ones, the Jefferson County, the Fayette County, the Kentucky Department of Education. Those are big audits, and they forget that we're always doing audits all the time, and that's just happening whether you know it or not. We're reviewing things, we're identifying things, we're fixing things, and that's always ongoing, and that's important. Obviously, Fayette County Public School System is critically important. We take it seriously. We're going to do it the right way, thoroughly and well, and get that in good shape. But all these other audits are important as well.
Just a few seconds left. Your goal then, as what you're saying here, is to give them a corrective plan.
Yes. That is exactly right. So we're going to get in there, we're doing a penny by penny, we're going to review it thoroughly, figure out how we got to the spot that we're in, and then what needs to be done to fix it, because my goal is to get them in good footing for the future. So one of the nice things about our ability as auditors is that we're not just identifying problems or what led to where we're at, we're also giving you tools and ways to fix it.
State Auditor Alison Ball, thanks for coming. We know you have a lot of work ahead on that one, and you'll keep us up to date as that goes along. All right, everybody, we'll wrap up Kentucky Newsmakers. A word about next week's program in just a moment. And as we wrap up Kentucky Newsmakers, next week we'll be talking with the Kentucky High School Athletic Association. That is one of our scheduled guests, and also maybe some political developments. So we'll have the latest for you on Kentucky Newsmakers. Thank you so much for joining us for this edition. Stay with WKYT News on air and online, and of course on WKYT Plus for the latest, and have a good week ahead.